Hi everyone, I'm Chris Yi.
And I'm Wendy Yi.
And welcome to another Dice Tower review.
Today we're going to be reviewing On Mars by Vital Lacerda.
Now this is a very complex strategic game, so in the rules overview here, I won't teach you every rule, but I'll give you a good idea of how it's played, and we'll come back up here for our thoughts. Here's approximately the two-player setup for a game of On Mars. This is going to be the player board that I'll be using here for the purple player. And you'll see that the board is divided into two different sections. This is the space station, and this is the planet side. So this is a worker placement game where your commander, your main person, is going to be represented here on either the space station side or over here onto the planet side, and that determines which set of actions you can take with your workers. If players start over here, then they'll be able to take actions on this side, which include putting out workers here to grab blueprints, or workers over here to be able to upgrade technologies that they have sitting on their board. Other actions do not actually require workers, and so therefore they show a different symbol instead of this red part at the top of the circle. These actions are to grab new technologies as you pay for them, and this is simply to grab resources. Now, if you are planet side over here, the actions you'll be able to take are to build new tiles, of course paying resources appropriately. You have to build them next to your builder bot, as shown over here. So if you build a tile, you place it out onto the map. Say that I grabbed earlier this blueprint over here. Then as the next action that I can take over here, I can put a worker out and I can upgrade a building. Next to, once again, my builder bot. I could take this, which doesn't grant me anything yet, but once I do take that action, I can place this, say, over here. I'll start generating this resource every once in a while, but I've also unlocked a bonus action and an executive action that's unique to me, and I'll explain that in a little bit. The next action you can take over here is to recruit a scientist, which can go to work in buildings, and once the scientists are gone, you replace them with contracts to try and fulfill. These actions down here are to move your robot so you can build in different areas, or your roaming collection bot so you can try and collect bonuses around on the board. And this action over here is to receive a spaceship with new colonists. This is how you can get more workers into your area, or even more of these builder bots so you can control the map a little bit better. Of course, over here on your player board, there's limited spaces for workers. So as you build new quarters out onto the map, then you can have more area to be able to receive the new colonists that you'll get. Now at the end of a turn, you simply take one worker action, but a lot of these actions can be augmented and taken more times. So this spot here doesn't cost a worker to put out, but you can exhaust more workers to be able to take additional resources for each worker that you exhaust, and so on. Now, at the end of a round, after you've determined every player in this order from first base down to the 8th, has taken their actions on the respective side of the map, the shuttle will move. The space shuttle is going to start over on one side of the map, not necessarily out here in space, but in this case, the yellow player could then decide if they wanted to ride the space shuttle across and put their leader somewhere over here and create a new turn order structure. You can place some bonuses out of the map and get a few additional bonuses, like retrieving your workers from this side of the map, and then the shuttle will be here. So players will take actions, and at the end of this round, in turn order, they can decide whether they want to ride the space shuttle across and get bonuses, such as producing for advanced buildings that they have out. This is going to continue until the end of the game is triggered. How is the end of the game triggered? Well, you'll see that there are 3 objectives out here, which have corresponding markers you can place onto their actions. Once players do things like this, like gain additional technologies onto their player board, which, by the way, earn bonuses over here, as players do that, they will get a small reward of 1 crystal and move this marker and advance it forward on this track. Once players have finished out these tracks here, they will advance the cube. Also, over on this side, as you build certain types of buildings, when I built this battery, this would bump this marker up. This here represents the life support system for the colony of Mars that we're trying to build. Players can earn bonuses, points over here, as well as bonus points shown at the top per levels of technologies and types of robots that you have on the board. But also, as players advance this upward, the life support for electricity, water, plants, and oxygen are all upgraded. Therefore, this is going to bump up. And you'll see as this bumps up to certain levels that this cube will also advance, which will trigger the end game and end game scoring. But one important aspect of this game is that players will take one main action per turn and one executive action. The executive actions are represented over here, and this is what players are going to use these crystals for. They represent some special resource mined out of Mars. These crystals allow you to take one bonus action on your turn, such as triggering the special action of a card, or gathering resources, or moving your robot. And as you receive more of these spaceships into your colony, these unlock more and more special actions that you can take. Now, at endgame scoring, you simply go through everything here, see who has the most points, and the most points is the winner. And while I don't usually take a lot of time to talk about the component quality of these giant Eagle Griffin Lacerda games, because they're obviously fantastic, Insert is really useful and good, there's a few small complaints I do wish to share. One is on the graphic design. I do kind of wish, so this is the icon here as to whether an action space requires a worker, and if you can use workers to augment it, whereas this space up here is an example of a space that doesn't require a worker. I wish that this were a little bit more visually clear to make it easier to teach. It's useful, and then obviously this doesn't show spaces for workers, but I do wish that this iconography were just larger, so it'd be easier to spot across the table. And then, while this insert is super good, I am bewildered as to why this resource tray here that shows the different resources you can collect, why this is not detachable. Why is this not its own thing that sits on the table? It's part of a gigantic L. Now, those two minor complaints aside, one of my favorite things that they did is for the stack of tiles that you build, it has its own little tray with its own little tray cover, which will get put here into the insert and keep everything nice and in shape, especially with this little cover that goes over it. So now you know how it's played. Let's talk about our thoughts on the game. This is a complex game. This is not an easy teach, and I've been taught this game, and I've now taught it, and I've also had to reteach it because it's easy to miss rules and then later on read through and say,
there are a lot of rules.
Hey, we need to play this part right, you know?
We may or may not have done that.
Yes, but overall, how was your experience with the game?
I think overall, I do enjoy this game, especially for a Vital Lacerda game. I feel like this is one of his few that has engine building in it. Like, I feel like you get going and you're building something and you're making something. I mean, I hope we are. As a settlizing planet, I hope we're not decreasing in our ability to survive.
No engine build. No engines on Mars. That's a good point. I do forget that, right? Because some of the other ones we've played, you have a lot of fun through the progression of it, but you're not necessarily building bigger. Yeah,
sometimes it feels like you're going and you're like, yeah, I did something. Now I have to start over and do something again.
Yeah.
So this is a little more progression.
Yeah, absolutely. This one, the tech track moves up on the board. You can do bigger stuff by the end of the game that you couldn't at the start of it, or you can do it better, or you can build those building groupings larger. Not only that, but also when you take the shuttle action and you get off of the planet and go back up to the shuttle, you can produce off of your advanced buildings and your mines, and so you get more things over the course of the game. I love the engine that you build in this one. This is really satisfying.
It's really fun, and it's interesting because Chris and I have kind of settled on two different strategies as we've played. I mean, that kind of happens in games sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoy building up the buildings. Now, what do you call those cards?
When you get them, they're blueprints.
Yes.
And then you
build a building.
Yeah, they become advanced buildings, I believe is the vernacular of the particular game.
Essentially, you're making an action card an action, and it's a bonus action on your turn that you can spend your nice little crystals to take and do fun stuff. And those bonus actions can be a range of things. They can give you resources. They can give you more actions that are hard to do, things like building more buildings or setting off rocket ships, just different things that you can do.
Yeah, I like that on your base board, as you welcome more of those rockets, those shuttles onto your board, you unlock more executive actions, and you get more of those executive actions by building the cars. And so And oh man, some of those card ones are really good because there's not a lot of ways to build more buildings as bonus actions. And so, this is one of those games you discover a lot. As we were playing, Wendy had all of these bonus actions to build more buildings on the map, which is super important. I was just sitting there watching her. Oh, you're going to do that. Cool. Whoops. I should have thought of this before. Wow, you're just running away with this,
Yeah, so that's a strategy I enjoy.
I don't know. I enjoy, so there's the two halves of the worker placement board. I enjoy as much as possible just planting myself on the Martian planet's surface and just trying to take every action there I can.
You never want to go to the space station again.
But
get me out of space. Give me a land to be on. I want gravity.
But there are really good bonuses for players that can bounce back and forth between the two, and that's the only way that you really get to replenish your workers, right?
And it's a big way to get resources if you've got tiles on the board.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's really interesting to me that there's a lot of choices to be made. Overall, I like it. I like the two halves of the board. It's thematic and it makes sense, and it's even though there's a lot of rules and it was a very difficult teach, conceptually it makes sense, and so I have a lot of fun with this game.
Now, when I think of the two sides of the board, I actually think of viticulture, and because viticulture, you start with the spring and then you go to the fall, winter time, spring, summer, fall, winter. But unlike that, you don't move to the end of the season, start over and get all your workers and then do it over again. Instead, you kind of choose, which is fascinating to me. Like you have to, in general, move along as the spaceship. You hop on it if it's going up to the space station. That's kind of the only way to get there. And so you have to follow it as it goes back and forth. But it's interesting that is how, like to get your workers back, you have to go one way and then come back. And that is so much more work than just that viticulture idea.
The timing of it becomes more precision. This is one of the few knocks that we both agree on for sure with this game is it's so
tight.
Difficult to calculate. Yeah, okay, if I go back up here, and as the game goes on, as you complete more of those objectives, then the spaceship, the shuttle takes 2 rounds to go back and forth, then 3 rounds, which is really 4 rounds, then 6 rounds, because it'll stay on each side for longer. I do think that could have been maybe cut away, and it wouldn't be as big of a deal to me. Like I wouldn't really miss it, I don't think.
Thematic to a fault. That's what I would say.
That is a thing that you will run into with Lacerda games if you're not familiar with them. Yeah, sometimes, this thematically makes sense. But is it really that fun in the game? I don't know. But overall, I love building up the technology. I love building up the board. I really enjoy the actions. I like, even though it's a complication, I like that some actions don't cost workers. You can just do that action, which really comes in handy if you're bouncing back and forth too slowly and you don't necessarily have workers. So, there's always something you can do, but it's tricky.
But then I kind of wish that those were actions that you could do from anywhere, since you don't need somebody to physically be there.
Right.
I have to physically be on Mars, but I don't have to have any workers on Mars. That, I don't know.
Yeah.
Small peeve.
So I don't know, any other major complaints or minor complaints about it? It's complicated. That's going to be...
It's complicated. Now, we do like complicated games, and I feel like if it could have been brought down just a hair. For example, if I want to place a nice little tile out onto the map and I want to say, okay, I am now going to produce wind here, there's just so much that you have to calculate. I have to make sure that, 1, I can afford to buy that. 2, that particular technology is upgraded. And then 3, I have to make sure that I've got my little Build-A-Bot there in the right location, and you only start with one of those, and so I have to advance my Build-A-Bots, I have to advance the technology, I have to advance my ability to build and get resources so I can build it. It just feels like a lot of advancement to put one little tile out.
But, and this is not the case in every game, I do find that each step in that procedure is pretty fun. There's something fun about, okay, I'm going to take this action to get this, get the resources, but also an executive action to be able to move my builder bots out to where they need to be, so that next turn I can do, there's a lot of steps to accomplish certain things, but they're fun. My favorite thing is the steps of building up the technology and seeing them get bigger.
You're always about technology.
I am, what I can be.
tracks on tracks. That's what this guy's about.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's just, it's a very mild complaint for me because I still enjoy, like you said, I enjoy the process of getting there. Sometimes I just think like, I want to do this thing, and with the jumping from boards and boards and getting ways to get resources and stuff, sometimes I feel like it took like 8 extra turns to do that one thing that I wanted to do.
You can get off cycle a little bit, but it's not as crushing as Kanban when you get off cycle in that game. So I think that's what I like about this. It's a little bit more flexible, it's a little bit more freeform, and it's a little bit more engine building. I think my biggest complaint is that I've played this with 4 players and multiple times now with 2, and I think it's more dynamic and fun with 4 players. In 2 players, you're limited to one set of each of the technology tiles, so someone can kind of gridlock you out of upgrading their technology, so you can't build up something that you're hoping to.
And then you can't spread the love of the positive interaction around, because literally if I use his technology or he uses mine, the other person benefits. Like there's no saying, hey, Joe over there, I'll use his technology, I'll give him the benefit.
That's fair.
There's less of that, yeah.
So overall, because of my 2-player experience, I raved about this game when I first played it, and I think after multiple plays now, almost like a year later, playing it with 2-player, I've cooled a little bit on it. But how little I've cooled on it is still impressive to me.
Still very good to you.
It's still really good.
And I still really enjoyed it. And for a Lacerda game especially, I feel like this is one of my higher ranked of his because it's got so many good things in it. And I feel like there's a lot of different directions you can go and a lot of things you can upgrade. And so the engine building isn't a one track. Like there's a lot of different things you can increase in, a lot of different strategies. And so I feel like there's plenty to explore with it, and there's plenty more to play.
So what would your ranking overall be for this?
So I think overall I would give this an 8. So I definitely highly recommend this game. It's a good game.
And I give this one a 9.
Wow.
And as odd, I really like it. And as odd as it is, usually with big, heavy, complex games like this, I almost prefer them always at 2-player. But this one's interactive and positive interaction, as you said, enough where you can help other players as you benefit from their technologies and stuff, that I want there to be more players at the table so that there's more, synergizing off of each other's techs and stuff like that. So this is one of the few heavier games that I think I've had more fun with at higher player counts rather than lower. So overall, still a 9 though. So highly, highly recommend it. I give this one a Dice Tower Seal of Excellence.
Sounds like it's a good game.
It is. It's very fun. So anyway, my name is Chris Yi.
And I'm Wendy Yi.
Thanks so much for watching.